Hi, welcome to our very first fireside chat. I'm Chief Tom Synan. I am part of the Hamilton County Addiction Response Coalition, and I want to introduce my little co-host in this little project here, Meagan.
Hi everyone, Meagan Guthrie. I'm the director of the Hamilton County Office of Addiction Response.
Hello, I'm County Commissioner Denise Driehaus. I'm the chair of the Hamilton County Addiction Response Coalition.
Well, we are out here tonight, and the reason why we're doing this is because we wanted to share some very powerful stories from some very powerful people. And what we're going to do, the hope of this is that you guys can share your stories about the grief, the journey, and hopefully inspire some people into those that are going through the same thing, is how can they walk through this and how can they make a change in their community like you all have. So we are very honored that you're here and that you're willing to be so courageous and share your vulnerability. So can you do us a favor? Can each of you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, and your journey to kind of get us started? Julie, you mind kicking us off?
My name is Julie Raleigh. I am a West Side girl, born and raised in Cincinnati, and my husband is the weatherman on Channel 9, and we fell in love and got married and had 4 children. And our youngest daughter, Maddie, had a trauma. She suffered a trauma in grade school, and it was bullying. She got bullied really, really badly, and then she was raped in high school. But she didn't tell us. She did not tell us. And she turned to drugs and alcohol. And she used them to numb the pain. I don't think she didn't know what PTSD was. She didn't know that she was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, because back then they didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it. So Maddie was trying to do what she could to numb that pain, to numb that inner pain, and the recurring thoughts that she would have, and just the reliving that night and all the things that happened to her. So it was that journey to dealing with it through alcohol and through drugs. And she started down the road of first just with marijuana, but we all know, I think, the gateway drug. It just takes them down the wrong path. And then it was more into more illicit drugs. And she tried to take her life, actually, her freshman year in high school after the incident. And it was then we kind of started down the road of trying to take her in and out of recovery centers. And they sent her to Lindner Center of Hope. So from after they, stabilized her after the suicide attempt, we took her to Lindner Center, and she got help there, but it wasn't enough, and she went back to drugs and alcohol. And it was the revolving door of this disease, the chronic nature. We all know it is chronic. It doesn't go away. It's something you have to battle every day. Maddie would always describe it to me, Mom, it's like I'm at war with myself and I'm at war with the world. When I wake up, I have to be battle ready. I have to be out there. I don't know what triggers I'm going to have at that day, but I have to be ready to take on whatever I can. And to be a young teenager, started when she was 13 or 14, without the road, what's the path? There's what is the recovery path? It's different for everybody. But when you're a young girl trying to figure out who you are anyhow, just maturing, and who am I? Where do I belong in this world? And to have that, something like that happen to you. And like I said, we took her to 6 different rehabs. We tried everything. She would describe it to me too. She said, Mom, you can't love me through this. I know you love me and you're there, all the things that I did with her, but she needed that community around her, to surround her, to keep lifting her up. But at that young age, it was tough. It was a really tough thing to do. So, and we have great rehabs here. We do. I mean, my gosh, look at what you guys are doing out in the community. Maddie, I think she got really tired of being tired. It just, the in and out of the same thing. She would say to me too, we'd leave a meeting, the instruction she would get when she would leave a rehab was, go to see your psychiatrist, go see your psychologist, go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and find new friends. Well, it's just not that easy. It is not that easy when you're a young teenager. But it was just that back out in the world, trying to see where I fit as a young girl, and back to the drugs, back to the alcohol. And Maddie was, I always described it as a perfect storm. It just spiraled downward. And she would describe it too. Like, she's like, Mom, I'm the loser of the family. She would put that L on her head, and she would go, I'm a loser. I'm a loser because this is what I have to do. My brothers and sisters are out there doing all these things, and I keep having to go in and out of rehab, and I can't get off the drugs. I can't get off. And her mental health, the depression, the anxiety that set in, the not wanting to go out, just staying, isolating in her room. You know, she was like, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing fun for her to do. Nothing, that can keep her moving forward. And she finally I think she just was tired of being tired, and Madi took her life. She was 24 years old, and the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department came and knocked on the door and told us that they found her on the railroad tracks underneath the 8th Street Viaduct. She had jumped off the bridge. I just don't think she couldn't take any more. She tried, she kept trying, and I remember her last rehab, she was back at Lindner Center of Hope, and she was in the Sibsey house. And she said, Mom, don't write that check. I don't need another rehab. I can teach it. I know exactly what they're going to do for the 28 days or however long they're going to keep me. I can teach it. I need a place to go that I can be with people that understand me and hang out and continue the road to recovery. And there was no place for her to go. And we lost her. And it really was. A parent is not supposed to bury their child. They're supposed to bury us. And we did what we thought was right, but we lost her.
Mike, can you tell us about your story, your journey, and your loved one?
Yeah, my name is Mike Dusold, and my son Brian was born in 1985, number 3 of 4, and he had pretty much normal, I would say, childhood. Loved sports. He had kind of a hard time fitting in. He had a superstar academic sister, older. He had a younger brother, superstar athlete. He kind of got to hang out with the wrong crowd and started using marijuana, gateway drug, in high school. And I would say 20-ish years old or so, started using heroin. And those were some rough years, in and out of treatment programs, some lockdown programs, in and out of jail, in and out of homeless shelters. Lived with us for a while. My now bride of almost 48 years. And that was hard, and ultimately, we had to kick him out because he was stealing, and it wasn't the right thing to keep him there anyway. So we'd exercise some tough love, and so again, just some very, very tough years. But it's interestingly enough, along the way, again, some tough times in and out. We never gave up on him. So thankful to my wife and his 3 siblings, that they never gave up on him. We just kept loving on him. And but ultimately, he went into a program in Dayton. Along the way, too, went through some great programs, just some great programs around the city and the tri-state. To name just a couple, Cat House, Talbert House, just some people doing great work in the community. But Brian came out of a lockdown program in the Dayton area about 5 years before he died, and he was like a new person. He went from being homeless. He was the only one of the 4 kids that didn't go to college and graduate college. But it turned out he wound up doing logistics sales, made $100,000 a year plus doing that. His life just turned around on the upswing. Wound up being a dad, and so a little boy, and one of our 10 grandchildren, and then shortly before he died in October of 2021, he found out, saw the sonogram for baby number 2, little girl to be born. So that was October of 2021. So he closed on a $300,000 house and saw the sonogram of little baby girl to be a week before he died. So that just wasn't meant to be. It was very difficult for me to go through that house. They had gotten the crib ready and painted the baby's room and the whole deal. And just to go through that and get things out of that house. That was just so difficult. But I'll tell you, his story, though, to me, and what I just want to encourage people, that you're not alone. If your loved one's going through substance use disorder, you didn't do anything wrong. And I think that's especially hard, I would say. I'll make a general remark, but I think especially hard for moms. It's like, hey, what did I do wrong? Well, you did nothing wrong. It was a world of choices and consequences, for your loved one. And so that, I think that's one thing. I just want to encourage people that way. The other thing is that there is hope, is that his life was turned around. He was just a joy to be with. He was the life of the party. He had the gift of hospitality. Because he went through what he went through, being homeless and everything else, he could just accept everybody just the way they were. And he just welcomed people. And he just loved on his little boy, loved on his nieces and nephews. They loved being with him. And we just celebrated life with him for those 5 years. And I've got a Google device in my bathroom. I see those pictures, and they coincide with the good years. So I latch onto the good memories. But for me, and I think a very important story that I want to get out is a story of faith. Even in death, there's hope. So quick story. So Brian died October of 21. I was supposed to host a deck crawl. I was going to host a chicken wing smoker for 40 neighbors. And but I had to email all of them and say, hey, I can't do it. Coincides with the funeral for son Brian. So they would stop me on the street, be walking the dog thereafter, and they would say to me, Mike, how do you do it? And how do you deal with your son Brian's death? And I would say to them, and I say to them now, if I could have died for Brian such that he would have had a normal life, I would have done that in a nanosecond. But that's what Jesus did for me and for Brian. That's how I deal with his death. So that's what I tell them. People don't have to have the same faith perspective as I do, but when people ask me, I'm going to tell them that's how I deal with it. So the faith story, I can't emphasize enough. That's worked for me. And the other thing, I guess, too, I would encourage people just to use the resources that are out there. So for my wife and me, what was super helpful is things like AA and NA. Groups of parents of loved ones. It's like, hey, you're not alone. You didn't cause it, and just sharing life together. And I can remember one particular night. Actually, came home from a meeting. The next day, it turned out Brian had gone AWOL from a program in Elizabethtown, Kentucky that we paid for. Showed up on my doorstep, rang the doorbell, and. He's, and I couldn't let him in, and we had gone through, some counseling and some work with, NA and so on, and it's like, I can't let you in. It wouldn't be good for you, and but you're my dad. You have to let me in, and you have to deadbolt the door. And thankfully, my wife wasn't there then. But it's things like that when you're with other people that can support you and help you to do the right thing, and things like administering tough love, still loving on them, never giving up on them. And again, for me, the faith part of it was we had to go through our own program, but when I was able to give him up to God, say, God, he's yours, and it's like it's not my power that's going to save him, it's your power to help me deal with it. When I got to that point, that gave me peace, and I could deal with Brian's death before it even happened.
Lori, thanks for being here tonight. Do you mind sharing your story?
Sure. My name's Lori Borcher. My daughter, she was Ashley Miller. She was born in 1990, and I was just 18 years old at the time, so I was a baby myself. I was a single parent. Her dad was not hardly involved with her. As she was small and getting into the toddler years and adolescence, she was very adventurous, very loving. very, I would say, defiant. I was always making sure like I knew where she was. Where is she now? She was always wandering off and things like that. I got married when she was 7, and Ashley just became more obstinate, more defiant, and her stepdad didn't do well with that, and they had a very difficult relationship. And as she got older, she was diagnosed with ADHD. We had lots of problems in school with teachers just not understanding it, not accommodating her at all. She started to struggle with anxiety, and then we had taken her to multiple different doctors, mental health providers, counselors. At one point, we took her to a psychiatrist that was just, I felt like he was just throwing medications at her like a dartboard. And she was telling me, like, this was when she was a teenager, that she would just ask, like, I want, this, or I want that. And he would be like, okay, we'll do this. But she wasn't a compliant patient. I would find the medicine, like, in my car, in the house, in different places. And when I would ask her about it, she would say that they made her feel worse. At the time, I was working for a genetic testing company that looked at medications and how people respond to them. And so I had her tested, and she had actionable results, but I couldn't get anyone to listen. It was very new back then, and back in like 2009, and no one would listen. So the medications weren't working. And I didn't see a substance problem, use problem, until she went to college. Her first semester at Ohio University, on Halloween night, I got a call from the hospital saying that she had drank so much that she'd become unconscious. Sorry, I'm going to be the one that cries. She became unconscious, and so that she'd been admitted to the hospital. And after that, it just kind of spiraled downhill. Her grades just plummeted. She wasn't going to class. So I brought her home, withdrew her, and enrolled her in a community college and tried to have her close by. We actually sent her to a treatment program in Florida. At the time, this was back 2010, I guess. Medication-assisted treatment, it was out there, but it was pretty new, not really well known. Not until like 2014 did it really start to become well known and out in the media and everything. And we never were even told that that was an option. So she went to an abstinence-based program in Florida, residential, and we went down for family weekend, and she came home, and I remember when she graduated the first time from the treatment program, she turned 21, so I took her to Disney World down there before she came home. And same thing, we were told she can't be around the same friends, same people, and it's a really difficult thing for them. They're coming back, they're already struggling, they're using drugs because they can't cope with life. And now you're bringing them back where you're telling them they can't see their friends, they can't, it's a very lonely place. And she started to just kind of revert back. Like, she was doing well for a little bit. And so she ended up, when my parents were out of town, she stole their car. And we knew before the police knew that she'd stole the car. And she was an adult, and I knew the only way that she was gonna go back to treatment was if a court told her she had to go. So I called the police and I turned her in for a felony. And they did, they sent her back. She went back to Florida, came back, doing well again. And then she just started back with, the risky behaviors. And I got a call that she'd been admitted to UC's intensive care unit. She had been in a horrible ATV accident where she was, her and some friends were joyriding on a golf course at 3 in the morning, and he was doing 360s, and she got thrown and had multiple skull fractures. And back came the opiates, right? You know, she's in the hospital, opiates are back. She was in Drake for a month, and I remember vividly sitting on her bed and saying, if you don't change the way you're living, you're going to die. And 1 year later, she had actually moved to New York for an internship she was trying to go to school for fashion, and her boyfriend lived in New York. And they were together for a year, and he broke up with her. And she told him, I'm gonna go get heroin and I'm gonna use. And that's what she did. And she died alone in a strange city in her apartment by herself that night. So that's our story. And we had a lot of, I was more of the tough love, you know, so I think that's one thing that I would say is just, it's very hard. It's hard to know what's the right. I had 2 young sons that were 10 and 12 years younger than her, and I was concerned, like I was finding drugs in the house, and so I couldn't have her live with me some of the time, and we were estranged for times as well, and it's very, very hard, and there's a lot of guilt after they're gone.
You're all still grieving, aren't you?
Oh gosh.
God, yeah.
We'll never stop grieving. I'll never. It's just, we're in this club we don't want anybody else to be a member of, you know, and it's like, the hole in my heart is, it'll never be filled. You can't fill it. Like, Maddie's gone. I can't bring her back.
Right.
We can't bring her
Yeah,
back.
and I appreciate the fact people want to talk about it differently, or not talk about it at all.
Yeah.
My wife really doesn't, you know, and again, people, and I respect that, you know, and so many or most people aren't comfortable doing it, but so I intentionally kind of want to go out of my comfort zone just to bring hope to people. It's like, you're not alone in this, you know, and there is help and support out there. And so, you know, so don't feel like you're a failure as a parent, because you're not.
Ashley was hilarious. I mean, she was extremely funny. She was very artistic, very good at drawing. She wanted to be a fashion designer. She adored her grandparents and her brothers. You know, and I think she liked me okay at times. At times, but you know, I think that they're not their addiction. You know what I mean? Who they are when they're in the throes of addiction is not who they really truly are. They're all, you know, they all have good things about them and good, you know, characteristics, and the drugs and the alcohol make them different people. And so I think that's just important to remember, and for other people to understand, because there's so much stigma out there.
Yeah.
So as we conclude on the evening and we kind of think to the future and really using your transformative grief into positive action and hearing your stories of resilience and community change, I guess, what would be your advice and your hope for our larger Hamilton County community as we move forward?
You know, for me, it's, you know, you guys, what you're doing with the coalition, amazing stuff. I absolutely, and I just think together we're better. The more people we can bring into, you know, moving the movement forward to help people with mental illness, to talk about it, to break the stigma. You know, in the beginning, my parents didn't even know Maddie for a year, what was going on with Maddie, because I was like, I'm failing as a parent. What am I doing wrong? You know, but now we're talking about it, and things, being here tonight with you guys, hearing Brian's story, hearing Ashley's story. You know, we all have a story. They were people. They were loved. They were sisters, brothers, friends, you know, cheerleaders, you know, sports players, soccer players. And they had a beautiful life that were taken from us too soon. And whatever the community, whatever we can do together as a team it's about what we can do together as a team. And, you know, Maddie's House is hopefully part of that team, and it's out there, and we're here to help it. The more we can get out, you know, whatever other help there is for people, you know, and everybody's journey is different, like we said. This might help somebody, but it might not help somebody else. So just the variety of different resources and helplines and whatever, I think is important.
One day, people will view people with substance use disorder like a person with diabetes and treat that person medically like they have diabetes. So the stigma we've talked about, that is erased, and they're treated with dignity and respect that they deserve.
And I agree, it's a disease.
Yes.
And that is something so much of the community don't really understand that. It is a disease. It's not something they can just turn on and off, and how it's treated and how they're looked at is so important. Yeah. Absolutely.
And a chronic disease.
And chronic, doesn't go away. They got to deal with it for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. And that's tough to take in.
Yeah.
I mean, even as a mom, to think about, I was like, wow, it was, and starting it at a young age.
I think what you guys are doing is phenomenal. Obviously, there's been so much more attention brought to the problem and to the stigma. And I think for me, what I see is kind of along the lines of what you said, viewing it as a disease. And one of the things I see being in the healthcare field is too many providers with this disease state letting the patient make the decision and not making the decision themselves, because they are not good at making decisions. The decisions that they've made are what brought them, you know, to where they are, whether it's jail, whether it's a treatment program. And I think they're so afraid of losing the patient that they're letting them kind of choose. And I think it needs to be the provider choosing the right path for that patient. So I think that's one thing that I've seen. And then just mental health. I hear there's so much controversy over, do you treat the mental health before, do you treat it after? And, you know, if you get them through addiction treatment and then you set them out on their own, are they going to go seek the mental health treatment? And if they don't, then it's likely they're going to turn back to drugs in order to self-medicate.
The stigma is so powerful, and especially in certain communities, that people can't get beyond the stigma, and so they don't talk about it, they don't seek help, whether it's the parents or the child, and so reducing the stigma becomes the key to trying to solve. I just want to say, all three of you are reducing stigma every time you tell a story about your kids. I mean, it's so moving to hear you talk about it, and you make it okay. You make it kind of normal. You know, we all suffer losses, but the stigma reduction of the kind of loss is so important. So I just want to say that, because I think it's part of the solution. I think it's why we're together, and why as a community we might be able to move in a way that's really start having an impact and saving some lives. So you're part of the solution.
The real decision is that fork in the road the first time whether to use or not. So I think that education for real young people, and having these discussions, you know, grandparents with grandkids, uncles and aunts with nieces and nephews, school counselors, teachers, priests, rabbis, ministers, everybody having these discussions, whether to use for the first time or not. That's the fork in the road.
There's not enough family practice providers treating alcohol. And there's a lot of people that aren't going to seek help at an addiction facility because of the stigma. And so seems to be a stigma amongst, you know, that type of physician treating alcohol. And I think there needs to be some education in that, in hopes that they can stop this before it leads down that path of worse.
Yeah,
you know?
So, Lori, you talked about support from your family, and I think that that's something of navigating that support and those resources as you guys are going through this. Of what would you say were some of those essential supports or resources? And then on the flip side of that, what was missing for you that you wish was there as you were navigating this process?
I did try to go to some support groups, and I went to a child loss support group, and I was hearing stories about child accidents and child cancer, and it was just such a different experience than what I was going through, and it kind of made me feel just very different from them. You know, I mean, those kids obviously made no decisions that led to that.
Right.
And it's a different grief, and I don't think there was enough resources out there, support groups for just this type of loss. So I think that was something that was kind of lacking for me.
I found some help through things like Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, professional counseling, what was very helpful for me. And certainly my family, just tremendous support from my wife, just phenomenal. 3 other children, Brian's 3 other siblings, 2 brothers and 1 sister. We're a close-knit group, and that's helped during and after. You know, we still have, like, Thursday nights generally our family open invite dinner night, and so we still connect with Brian's 2 little ones. So those are some things that have worked well and have helped me. And, you know, those types of things I think can help some other people. Not everyone, but
Right.
can help others too.
'Cause I agree. All our journeys are different. I got really angry at God. Like I said, I went through a real angry day, but I've since gone back to the church, and I feel that faith too. So it helps me walk and get up every day. But yeah, there's just.
Yeah, and I don't want to come across like counseling doesn't help, because it was very helpful for my youngest son, for sure. I think it's just knowing that it's different for different people.
Yeah.
And that's okay, you know?
I wish there was a better word than thank you. I wish there was a more powerful word that would match what we heard tonight. So thank you is not enough, but I will say this: your courage and your vulnerability is extremely powerful, and that changes people's lives. It changes the community. And I believe that in vulnerability, when you can reach that point, there's nothing left but honesty. And when we reach honesty, then we can make changes. So thank you for being here tonight, and we really thank you for sharing your stories.